For better or for worse, AI is here. I had no plans on hiring a real human to do that. We are doubling down on doing and using AI agents in our business. I have Karen on my team. She's devoting a couple hours a week to AI things in our business. So as an example, she's working on creating an AI agent for customer support. My team does not work nights and does not work weekends. I want my team to have their nights and their weekends off. So we're creating an AI agent that's just gonna work in those off hours. So if they need a password or they didn't get something or they're confused, I want an AI agent to actually be helpful to answering questions over a 3-day weekend when my team isn't working. But I wasn't gonna hire a real human to do that, right? Because I don't want a human who's gonna work nights and weekends for me. Hey, beautiful friend. If you're a longtime listener of the podcast who's been dying to work with me but hasn't pulled the trigger yet, I have an incredible opportunity to work with me for a fraction of the cost. If your estheticians can't explain your signature plans or your new injectors panic every time they have to sell a high-ticket consult, it's not their fault. It's the system, or more specifically, your lack of one. That's exactly why I built Ask Heather AI, the first strategist level tool for aesthetic and wellness CEOs who want to scale with precision and stop flying by the seat of their pants. Inside, you get 3 powerful tools, each designed to solve the exact gaps that keep your growth tied to you. Turn your basic menu into a branded high-ticket signature offer suite your whole team can sell. Train every team member to lead premium consults with confidence, even if they've never sold a thing. Write magnetic messaging that attracts premium patients without sounding like every other clinic online. These are the same frameworks we've used to scale clinics to 7 figures and beyond, and they used to cost 5 figures to access. Now, you can have them in your back pocket. Try Ask Heather AI for 30 days and see what happens when you stop guessing and start scaling with words that work. Head over to heathertrevine.com/trial to learn more. Well, hello, my friend. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today's episode is actually inspired by a recent conversation that I had with my oldest daughter, Reese. My oldest daughter, who's 16 years old, she is so talented and incredible. I know I'm incredibly biased. And she actually wants to go into medicine. She actually wants to be a pediatric immunologist because she has had severe food allergies from a very young age, okay? And so she has experienced a lot of seeing immunologists over the years, and she actually was participating in a trial that was done between Stanford, the Mayo Clinic, and then here at Phoenix Children's Hospital, where they were testing OIT, oral immunotherapy, because one of the things she's allergic to is dairy. And there have been past studies done where OIT, oral immunotherapy, which works for like peanut allergies, as an example, did not work, didn't have a statistically significant effect on kids with dairy allergies. And so she participated in a study that was spearheaded at Stanford, but they were partnering with Phoenix Children's Hospital here, that was combining OIT with a biologic. And so she participated in that study a couple years ago, and that was like what sealed the deal of her desire to get into medicine. And so what's interesting is that she's interested in medicine a lot, and then she's also very artistic. Okay, she's really into art and she's a very talented artist. And she actually started a 501c3 called Art for Art. Okay. And so in Art for Art, they raise money. She raises money for kids to have, who may not normally have access to art, to have access to art kits. as well too. And she's donated time to different kid ventures. And the first actual thing that she raised money for through Art for Art was actually a camp that helps kids who have really severe asthma and really severe food allergies who wouldn't be able to go to normal camp to actually go to a sleepaway camp where there are medical providers on staff so they can actually enjoy camps. And she developed the art curriculum. I'm just telling you this whole story. There's a point, so hang with me. And so she is she's an old soul. Okay, she's very mature for her age. She knows so much more about what she wants to do at 16 years old than I did. When I think about what I was doing when I was 16 years old, she is like years ahead of me. She's just an old soul. And part of her old soulness is like, yes, she knows what she wants to do with her life, and this will obviously change and evolve as she matures and she goes out into the world and experiences new things. But she's the antithesis of a lot of other 16-year-olds in the sense that she doesn't like social media. She doesn't like technology. She has kind of a negative image of technology. And so when she launched this 501c3 to raise money for arts, and how she raises money is she is a very, very talented artist. She's great at drawing and she's great at watercolor. And she actually provides pet portraits. Okay, so these are hand-painted watercolor pet portraits. So you could submit a picture of your dog. She will hand paint a pet portrait. And in fact, you can go over, I'm going to shout her out. You can go over, I'll make sure to put the correct Instagram handle in the show notes, but I'm pretty sure it's at artforart.co over on Instagram, and you can go and check her out and see the amazing artwork that she does, okay? So she does that. She also does other things. She raises money where you can donate money as well. And right now she's really focused on art kits. So for every $50 that she raises, that provides one art kit for a kid in need. So I'm also just shouting her out in case you're interested and you feel like you want to be generous and help Reese out. But what's interesting is that I am actually a tech optimist, okay? And so what I want to talk about in this episode is I want to talk about AI and what I see happening with AI and some of my ethical beliefs around the ethics of AI and the concerns around AI and what it means for us as business owners and using AI in our businesses for our kids. I have a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 12-year-old. Like, what will this mean for them as, my 16-year-old is looking to study medicine, but even my 14-year-old, like, what are the careers that they're going to look at that are going to be sort of AI foolproof? And so I want to just share some of my ideas around this, but the conversation was really inspired by this conversation I had with Reese. So she is 16 years old and she's never had social media. And my rule with my kids is that once they can't have social media until they get to high school. And then once they're in high school, they can have limited access to social media. And then my husband and I, we follow them and we really pay attention and actually monitor what they're doing on social media. But what's interesting is when Reese got to high school, she had like zero desire. Literally everybody, and for those of you who have high schoolers, at least here in Phoenix, all the high schoolers communicate through Snapchat, okay? I don't have Snapchat, right? I got Snapchat just so I could see and follow my kids, but I had never experienced Snapchat. They use it like texting. It's a whole different world. But Reese basically opted out of that and she just texts with her friends and uses phone calls and other in-person communication because she just doesn't love social media. But when she launched Art for Art, and she was looking for ways to raise more money to get more exposure for her pet portraits, to get more exposure for her fundraising efforts. We were talking about it and I was like, you know what you're going to have to do? And she's like, I know it. Launch an Instagram, right? And she could launch a TikTok and other things too, but she just decided she's just going to start with Instagram. She needed a website. So she had to use technology. And I find this is true for many of you as well, too. You know, it is like technology is one of those things where like you've gotten away maybe with not having to do or be involved or actually be super knowledgeable about a ton of it. And so I talked about this before on one of the episodes where I talked about like becoming a media company and the fact that each and every one of you really should think thoughtfully about the fact that you likely need to think of yourselves as a media company. The more of you who dive into being a media company. So we'll link that up in the show notes because it wasn't that long ago that I recorded that episode because we talked about this as well too, that for Reese in Art for Art and then for Sydney, who is, you know, wants to play softball in college, all of these different things that a few years ago, you wouldn't have had to have social media, right? Because it wasn't even a thing like 20 years ago. You wouldn't have had to actually use these things. And now Reese, who is really passionate about raising money for kids in need who want art, she's like, I actually need an Instagram. And so we were talking about Instagram and creating content on Instagram, and you can go check out her videos. She's been starting to really record herself painting and all of these things. And so she was like, Mom, she's like, I really want to come up with a really great calendar for like a social media calendar, right? So I told her, I'm like, you should really go to ChatGPT and have it help you create and have it research, you know, put in a prompt where it acts like an Instagram expert that helps nonprofits develop a visibility strategy through Instagram. And so she was like, she did not like this idea. And so in her mind, she was like, hey, Mom, like, I don't want to use ChatGPT. I don't want to use AI. That feels like it's out of integrity. And so initiated this conversation that I had with her where I'm like, I posed some questions to her to think about it differently. Okay. She is also in AP research. Okay. So for those of you who have high schoolers or who have had high schoolers that have taken AP research, essentially AP research is a class where they do a research project. It's actually a very cool class if any of your kids end up being able to take it, or maybe you took it when you were in school. And so the whole curriculum for the entire year is they do a research project. And on back to school night, Bryce and I, where you go around to you actually go around to every single class. Okay. So we went to back to school night for juniors, and you get your kid's schedule and then you go to every single class. And so when we were in AP research, learning about this research project, and her teacher was explaining to us that how they are allowed to use AI in researching for the research project. So they can take these really long studies as an example and put the studies up into ChatGPT and have ChatGPT actually help them understand what the results of those studies are. Where they cannot use ChatGPT is they cannot then use ChatGPT to actually write the research paper, to actually do the thinking of what they think from the research that they have actually read through. Okay, so there's like a nuanced thing there. So as I was having this conversation with Reese, we're talking about, okay, it made me really think about, for all of you, where should you be using AI? And I also just know that many of you are old souls, just like Reese, and you're skeptical or maybe even a little put off about using AI in your business. And there's a whole variety of reasons. You know, there's like the environmental concerns about AI as well too. So I wanted to kind of unpack today my thinking around it, just to share with you and to kind of share where I think AI is going, where I'm currently going to be using it and where we're doubling down more on it, and then where I don't think we will be using it and where we strategically won't be going and using more AI. So one of the examples I gave Reese, so Reese was like, I don't want to use AI for the content planning as the example, which after we had this conversation, she ended up using ChatGPT to help her create an Instagram plan. And for the last couple of weeks, she has really doubled down on using AI to help her with some of the planning and some of the other things that she can use. Like, for example, the writing of the captions. She's still video recording herself creating the art. None of the art is created by AI, right? It's all hand painted by her, but using the AI for the other things. Now, one of the things that I think is interesting is that I think as AI becomes more and more used, there's going to be this uptick in value given to in-person events, into real art, right? Like, I think the value of hand-painted art is actually going to go up the more that we see that there's AI art as well too. So that's a total sidebar. But Reese started to use the AI in these different areas and she was like blown away. The other thing I told her is like, you've already been using AI. You don't think to yourself, right? Like, my kids don't know anything different than using GPS to map out going somewhere. Like, they've never lived through their friend on a rotary phone giving them directions to their house. I'm like talking about myself here, where I had to write directions street by street, right on Bernardo Heights Boulevard, which is one of the main streets where I went to high school, right? Writing out, I have vivid memories of writing it out. They don't even think of that because they use GPS, right? Which is a form of AI that gives us directions to where we're going. We don't think to ourselves, oh, that's unethical or out of integrity, right? Autocorrect and some of the other sort of messaging apps where you can, like, it helps you autocorrect. Those are forms of AI that have already actually been used. We just don't really think of it, that it's happening in the background when we're writing through text messages and Google Docs and what have you as well too. So the other thing, that analogy that I was using when we were having this long conversation, is whether or not to use it. I liken it to cars and automobiles, okay? The cat is sort of out of the bag, so to speak. Like, are cars and automobiles good for the environment? Probably not, right? But most of you who are listening to this have a car. I have an electric car. I'm not even convinced that that's even better necessarily because of all the energy it takes to actually create the batteries for the electric cars. I don't know. I think the jury's still out. But like, in the same way that like, we all now are using cars, for better or for worse, AI is here. And so there are things that you can decide to use and parts of it that you can decide not to use. So here are some of the things I am like, sort of the frameworks that I'm using in our approach of using AI in our business. Okay, so obviously we have Ask Heather AI. I'm using it when I think about serving my clients really, really excellently. There was no doubt in my mind that creating different GBTs on my pillars of what I help my clients with so that they could creatively create their menus, they could have help with sales training and consults with our consult bot, and then they could have access to all of my social, all of my email frameworks, all of my messaging frameworks inside of the marketing bot. Like, that was like a very easy yes for me to decide that this is actually going to help serve my clients, which my whole business, that is one of the main decision filters I have with making decisions. Will this help my clients? There are things that we are not doing in our business that I had no plans on hiring a real human to do, that we are doubling down on doing and using AI agents in our business. I have Karen on my team. She's devoting a couple hours a week to AI things in our business. So as an example, she's working on creating an AI agent for customer support. So my team does not work nights and does not work weekends, but sometimes people on my team feel like they need to respond to like customer support inquiries outside of our business hours. I don't want them doing that. right? I want my team to have their nights and their weekends off. So we're creating an AI agent that's just gonna work in those off hours because we have ads going and we have people purchasing our products 24/7, right? So if they need a password or they didn't get something or they're confused, I want an AI agent to actually be helpful to answering questions over a 3-day weekend when my team isn't working. But I wasn't gonna hire a real human to do that, right? Because I don't want a human who's gonna work nights and weekends for me. So that's an example. I'll be talking more about AI agents. If you want to learn more about the basics of AI agents, I had a conversation with Mike Lemieux from MedSpa Media a few episodes back that you might want to listen to because he's really using AI agents in his agency as well too. I'll be sharing more, so be sure to tune in as we actually launch these AI agents and sharing the behind the scenes. But I wasn't hiring somebody to do LinkedIn content for me, as an example. I had no future plans or immediate plans of hiring somebody. But if I can have an AI agent actually help repurpose some of our content onto other platforms and research other platforms for me, then I am going to use an AI agent to do that. It's not actually replacing a job that I would normally do. The other thing when I think about future-proofing for my kids is that even the roles within my company is that everybody will need to understand how to use AI to do their job even more effectively as well too. But we're still going to need the humans, right? It's always going to be a hybrid approach. For me, it's going to just be me and a bunch of AI agents, right? I wouldn't even want that. So I wanted to just share some of the thought process to it because I know for many of you are like Reese, right? Many of you are old souls who are like Reese, who are like, this feels kind of icky. I don't know if I would just want to kind of keep my head in the sand, which is what Reese, when she first came to me, actually was her game plan was when it came to AI and technology and even social media too. So I just wanted to share some thoughts. This will be an ongoing conversation because AI is going to be a huge part of what we're doing. And I want to make sure that I am keeping you along for the ride as we learn new things. I will bring it to you on episodes of this podcast in the future too, as we actually implement more AI agents and some of the other really fast-moving things that are happening with AI too. All right, my friend, that is what I have for you this week. I will see you next week.